Good morning again. Okay, so here's what I want you to do this morning. Let's just sit back a minute, and everybody just take a great big breath. I'll tell you why. And then let it out real slow. There. Doesn't that feel good? Are you relaxed? Are you easy? No fear? Okay. And I wanted to do that because today we're going to start chapter 10 in the book of Revelation. And all the terrible things that happened last week, remember in chapter 9? They're all behind us. At least in chapter 10, they're all gone. The bottomless pit, if you remember, was open, right? And scorpions and smoke and flame billowed out of the earth. And a third of the earth was polluted, and a third of the sky was darkened. And these scorpions came forth, and they tormented mankind for 5 months. And I don't know if I mentioned this week. I don't think I did, so I want to mention it this week. We learned in the book of Revelation 9:5, and the scorpions were not given authority to kill them, meaning mankind, but to torment mankind for 5 months. And this was the place, remember, where people couldn't die? They would want to die, and they just couldn't die. But the important thing that I found here, that I know here, and I forgot to mention, was we're told exactly how long this torment would last. It would last how long? Five months, right? Why 5 months? I mean, what does God want us to understand by telling us that this particular judgment lasted for 5 months? And the answer is that he wanted us to know then, now, and then, that he is still in charge, that he's still among the people, and those that are left behind at this particular time can still turn to him and his son Jesus Christ for salvation. Now, look at that verse again, because you will see God in that verse if you look at it. Go back to that verse. It says, and they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. So, 5 months. Now, if you remember, well, first off, God's name isn't mentioned anywhere in chapter 9, is it? If you read the Bible, God's name isn't mentioned anywhere in chapter 9. So why would you say, why can you see God in this verse or in this chapter when his name isn't mentioned? All we see was these torments and these things going on. But I want to tell you, the Jewish calendar had 12 months in the Jewish calendar, just like our calendar, except they worked on the lunar calendar, so they only had 30 days each month, correct? And so 5 months equals 150 days. Now, do your math. If I did my math right, it's 150 days. Now, think of it. What other event in the Bible took 150 days to accomplish? Do you remember what event it was? Huh? The Great Flood, absolutely, you're right. Mr. and Mrs. Noah and all the kids went on a worldwide cruise. And they were bobbing around the sea for quite some time until the boat came to rest on the top of Mount Ararat. And it was 5 months, or it tells us 150 days. Look at Genesis 8:3. The waters receded continually from the earth at the end of the 150 days. The waters decreased. Was God there during that time? Absolutely. Absolutely. So these two verses, one of the verses in the book of Genesis and this verse in the book of Revelation, even though God isn't specifically mentioned in this chapter, in this book here, but we see his presence, don't we? We saw his presence for 150 days or 5 months in the flood, and we see his presence with these scorpions at this punishment that lasted for 5 months or 150 days. And not only do we see his judgment, but what else do we see? His divine intervention. He's still working behind the scenes, even though he's not mentioned, even though you don't see him, he's still there. And that should give you and I, of course, we hopefully won't be here at this time because we'll be raptured. If you're a faith-believing believer, we'll be raptured before this event. But people during this event, there'll be some pastors who won't be raptured. And they'll go back to their book of Revelation and they'll go, oh my gosh, look at this, it's all happening. And they'll understand that people will flood their churches and they'll lose their lives, but they'll flood their churches and they'll understand this and they'll know that yes, God has pronounced judgment on the earth, but he's still here to save us. Yes, he pours his wrath out on the earth, and yes, he will deal with sin with an iron fist. But if anyone stops and confesses their sins during this time, they'll be saved. Amen? Yeah. So let's look at Revelation 10:1-4. I saw still another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. He had a little book open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. And he cried with a loud voice as when a lion roars. And when he cried out, 7 thunders uttered their voices. And when the 7 thunders uttered their voices, I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, seal up the things which the 7 thunders uttered, and do not write them. Now, let me work backwards here, because the first thing when I read those verses years ago, I wondered first off, who was the 7 thunders? And I think the answer is found in the book of Psalms, Psalm 18:13, that says, the Lord thundered from heaven, the voice of the Most High resounded. So this to me would be God. His voice is thundering from heaven. And the second thing that caught my attention was, what did God tell John not to write down? Right? I heard a voice from 7 to me say, seal up the things which the 7 thunders uttered and do not write them down. What was John writing down or prepared to write down, but God didn't want him to write down? I don't know. He said, seal up the things which the 7 thunders uttered and do not write them. And I thought about this for a long time, so I went on this venture trying to research it, trying to find out what it might be. What's this mystery, and what did God say that John wasn't supposed to write down? And I studied it, and I looked at others for answers, and I prayed about it. And one day, finally, this voice came to me, and I heard God, and I went, wow, and he said, it's none of your business. It's none of your business. Which means the biggest thing that God wanted to John to know is unavailable to us. We're just not supposed to know. And at first I wasn't sure what to make of it until I discovered that not knowing some things is awesome. Isn't it? It's a blessing. Now, if you've ever been into a room full of pastors, and we're all sitting there, we're standing there, we're all having coffee or whatever, and we're talking, and there's always somebody in the room walking up and wants to quiz everybody to see how smart they are, to tell you how smart they are, you know? And they'll say, well, I was reading Jeremiah last week. I was reading chapter 10 and verse 9, and what do you think about that? And you're supposed to just know Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 9. And so one of them, so when he walks up to me and said that, you know me, I'm not just going to let it pass. And I said, oh, you're talking about Jeremiah? He said, yeah. I said, well, Jeremiah was a bullfrog. He was a good friend of mine. I didn't understand a single word he said, but he always had some mighty fine line. Joy to the world, all you boys and girls. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me. And usually the pastors would all walk away. But to me, that's liberating, isn't it? It's liberating and it's a blessing because I do not know everything. I know, you don't believe me. But I don't. I don't have the answers, and neither do you, to everything. We don't. And I'd be more than happy to tell you I don't know. I would be. I'd be more than happy to tell you I don't know. And if you ask me a question I don't know the answers, I'll look it up. Well, except Daryl. Daryl has all the answers. I'm sorry, Daryl. I blew it, didn't I? God said to John, I don't want you to write this down because I want to reveal it when? In my own good time. It's not for anyone to know. And that's okay. So, back to our verses. Chapter 10, verse 1. I saw still another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. Now, here we learn that a strong angel, a mighty angel, was coming down from heaven, and he was clothed with a rainbow on his head, and his face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. So there's some discussion about who this is, because some say that it's an angel, and it can't be Jesus because this isn't the time for Jesus' second coming, right? The second coming doesn't come when? Until after the tribulation. And so if this angel's coming down and planting his feet on the land and on the sea, that would mean this is Jesus' second coming. And so some say this can't be Jesus. And then others say that it's simply what it says it is. It's a mighty angel. And they often refer to Michael, the archangel, and say it's him. And then some others still say that it's parenthetical. In other words, that we should put parentheses around it, and we should say, well, this is the vision that John saw and of what it will be like when Christ does come to earth, what he does when the second coming. And finally, some believe, and I tend to lean this way, that it's a Christophany. Remember what a Christophany is? It's a non-physical manifestation. It's an appearance of Jesus. In other words, it's an illusion, if you will. It's an appearance of Jesus and what he will do when the time comes, but it's not physically him. Does that make sense? In the Bible, these things are called Christophanies, when Jesus shows up to somebody as an angel, by the way, as the angel of the Lord, but it's not really him. It's this illusion. Revelation 10:2 is this angel anyway had a little book open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. And when Christ comes, that's what he will do. That's exactly what he will do. He'll put one foot on the land and one foot on the sea. And why not? He owns it, right? I mean, it's all his. He owns it. Look at Psalm 95:5. The sea is his. For it was his who made it, and his hands formed the dry land. So why else would he stand on the sea and stand on the land at the same time, other than to say, this is mine, I own it, I'm coming back to my land. And it says that he has a little book or a scroll in his hands, and this is interesting. This is a new book. It's not the book that we've read about already that he's opened up. Remember when he was given the deed to the earth, when God gave him the deed to the earth back in a few chapters ago? This is a new book. And it's used, this deed that he has this time, or this thing that he has this time, is used to split up what you would own. The word is to split up what you would own if you were going to, if someone wanted to inherit the land. Let's say that I owned a lot of land, and in my will I would say, I want my heirs, I want this person and this person and this person and this person to, that's what I would use. That's the type of deed that he's holding in his hands. Because the earth has already been paid for. And now this is going to be splitting it up. And Jesus owns all of this. And who are these folks who are Jesus' heirs? We are, absolutely, each and every one of us. Look at Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they will what? Inherit the earth. So here he has the paperwork. He says, I own all this. This is mine. I'm on the land. I'm on the sea. It's all mine. And now you guys are going to inherit all of this. Isn't that awesome? Yes. It is. I think in all of this story, all the way through, we're seeing that God is in charge. He's saying, I'm still in charge, and even though the war has been won, and even though the battle rages on, I am still in charge. And all you have to do is stay strong, right? And you will what? Inherit all this. But we have to stay strong. Even today, I mean, it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse every day. You know, yesterday, I guess was it yesterday or Friday? I don't remember, but I was so upset about it. It was a bummer. They opened up the Olympics with a bunch of transgenders making fun of the Last Supper. I mean, how deranged and how evil must you be to not only to do that, but to let it happen. You know, I swear to you, I'm not going to watch 1 minute of the Olympics this year in protest. But my point is, and even in all that, we have to stay strong. You can't fly off the bat and just stay strong, because why? He's in charge. It's his will, it's his plan, and we're part of it. So all we have to do is just stay strong. Revelation 10:3, he cried out with a loud voice as when a lion roars, and when he had cried out, the 7 peals of thunder uttered their voices. This voice has been compared to a great trumpet, and you've heard it in the sound of many waters. But here we are told that it sounds like a lion, and he roars. And if you remember, the lion is a symbol of the book of Mark. Remember that? Matthew symbolizes the humanity of Jesus Christ. He talks about the humanity of the man. In Mark, it talks about his supremacy. In Luke, it talks of the ox. It talks of the good works and the good deeds he does. And in John, it speaks of the eagle. And then that book talks of who he is. He's Jesus Christ. He's the Son of God. He's the God Most High. And so the 7 peals of thunder clearly remind us of this 7-fold voice of the Lord mentioned in Psalm 29. Here's what it said. It says, ascribe to the Lord, O sons of the mighty. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due to his name. Worship the Lord in holy array. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord is over many waters. Isn't that beautiful? This is so powerful. This commanding voice cries out, and we don't know what he cries, because like I said, he told me it's none of my business. But it did cry out, and it cried out something that's got to be said then, and it's going to have to be good for us, because only he does good things. Revelation 5:6, then the angel who I saw standing on the sea and on the hand lifted up his right hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created the heavens and the things in it, and the earth and the things in it, and the sea and the things in it, that there would be no delay any longer. We're at the halfway point of the tribulation. The first half of the tribulation is called the tribulation. The second half is called the what? Great tribulation. So every time we've opened up these judgments, they get worse and they worse and they get worse. And now we have the bowl. We're at that point halfway through. And for the next 3.5 years, we'll have the bowl judgments. And those are even worse than what we've seen so far. So maybe when we start that, we'll have to take a big deep breath too. But those are going to be bad. 3.5 years. This speaks of, you ever heard he said, he says here, there will be no delay any longer. He says that this will last times and a half, right? A time means a year, times means 2 years, and a half means a half year. So there will be no delay, he said. This will not delay any longer than a times and a half. So he's put an end to this. So people living at that point ought to know, oh wow, this is going to end in 3.5 years. I mean, I'm sure the last 3.5 years has felt like a lifetime, but at least they know there's an end coming. And some of them will accept Jesus and some of them won't. Verse 7 says, but in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he is about to sound, then the mystery of God is finished, and he preached to his servants and prophets. I did study this intensely, because there are so many mysteries of God, isn't there? There's so much we do not know. And over the years, I've studied this, and I've asked this, and I've asked questions, and I've done this, and I wanted to know all of these mysteries. And I finally have the answer, because there are hundreds of different mysteries that we can talk. You might be saying the same thing I did. I don't really understand what he means, that the mysteries is finished. And the mysteries that I looked at was, why has God allowed evil into our lives? Why do people have sickness and disease? What's his ultimate plan for Israel? What's his ultimate plan for the church and for the Gentiles? And you know what I found the answer was to all of these questions? Why is there so much trouble in the earth? Why is there so much bad things that happen? Why? I finally found the answer. It's faith. Now listen to me for just a minute. It's faith. Imagine this. It's faith that produces our ability to know Jesus Christ. It's faith that produces our ability to love and worship God and Jesus Christ. And it's faith that allows us to love each other, correct? Correct. And so, you see, without God, without faith, and this is the mystery, without God, without faith, this sin-filled, broken world would consume us, wouldn't it? It would consume us. And we remain prisoners here in this filth until we died and then went to another place that was even worse than this. But faith in God is the cure and the answer to all of his mysteries. It makes sense, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, we have sin in the world. Yeah, we have sickness. Yeah, we have disease. Yeah, we have small kids dying. We have all of these things that are wrong. But it's faith that lifts us from all of this. It's faith. Now, some understand it. Blew GZ's mind again. Some understand it, but some don't, right? Some people will grasp that and say, yes, that's exactly what the mystery is faith, and some won't. Verse 8, then the voice which I heard from heaven, I heard again speaking to me, and he was saying, go take the book which is opened in the hand of the angel who stands on the sea and the land. And so this great voice speaks to John again. Now the first time he spoke to God was in Revelation 4:1, and he said, come up here and I'll show you. So the voice said, come on up here and I'll show you. Then in this chapter, in verse 4, we heard him speak as thunder, and now he wants John to take the book from his hand. And so we find something similar to this in the book of Daniel. Daniel 12:9-13, he says to Daniel, go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed. See that? It's none of your business too, Daniel. Go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed and sealed up until the end of time. But as for you, go your way to the end. Then you will enter into rest and rise again for the allotted portion of the end of the age, for the time allotted for the end of the age, and that's that 3.5 period. Daniel was promised and guaranteed an allotted portion a long time ago, and Joshua divided up, if you remember, divided up God's promise of the land of Israel, right? And he divided it up to all of the 12 tribes. God gave Joshua land, and he gave a little bit away to all the 12 tribes. Verse 9 says, and so I went to the angel telling him to give me the little book, and he said to me, take it and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey. His word, I read it, is sweet as honey, right? I put it in my mouth, I put it in my brain, and I swallow it. Boy, it's nice and sweet. But the effects of it can make us bitter, can't it? The effects of it, because if we sin, we feel bitter about that. We see sin, we feel better about that. We're saying there are consequences to the responsibility that the Word has given us, right? The Word has given me and you responsibilities, and if we break those responsibilities, right? If I go out and say, let's say out of anger I swear, then it's bitter. That's bitter because that's not one of the things I'm supposed to do. King David said the same thing, and Ezekiel said the same thing. Ezekiel said the book contains lamentations and mourning and woe, but when we eat it, it's sweet as honey. But it contains lamentations and woe and mourning, and that's what happens. So today and then, like Israel, people feel the same way. The word of the Lord is sweet, but there are others that choke on its bitterness. You know people like that who don't accept Jesus Christ. They choke on the word. It's too bitter for them. Yeah. Revelations 10:11. So he took the little book out of the angel's hand, and he ate it, and in my mouth it was sweet as honey, and when he had eaten it, my stomach was made bitter. And they said to me, you must prophesy again concerning many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. So John noticed or was a witness to these seals opening and the trumpets blowing and all of the events that took place in this chapter. But then we realized that the job is only half done, because God says, what in the last? You must prophesy again concerning many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. And when is that? Now. This has been prophesied for the last 2,000 years. And this prophecy will continue as long as people keep reading the Bible, and it will continue until the end of time. So that's chapter 10, okay? All right. Thank you.